Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mama Project podcast. I have a guest for you all today. She's become a good friend of mine, Taryn Keller. She is a functional nutrition practitioner. She has a background in nursing, and we met probably about 6 months ago, right? I was teaching, the classes that I teach at the studio in Batavia, and she has three kiddos of her own, and we got into talking about we serve the very same population, right? I serve moms when it comes to pelvic floor trauma and injury, like prolapse, and she serves moms from a nutrition perspective when they're depleted postpartum. She talks about different symptoms that they might have postpartum. And so I knew I had to get her on the podcast. It's just both being moms, getting the schedule lined up. But I'm glad that she's finally on here today. So, Taryn, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat more about this. I feel like women are just an underserved population and moms deserve better. So here we are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is why this podcast exists to speak to all of those things. So, first, tell us a little bit more about who you are, like beyond the bio, who you were before kids, and how that all led up to what you are doing now.
Yeah, so I was a nurse for about 15 years, practiced in conventional medicine, um, and was very like modern medicine is the end all be all, and kind of like to say I woke up in 2020. Just really seeing a lot of the Band-Aid medicine that we practice, um, really not, getting to the why behind symptoms, really using medications to kind of like treat symptoms. But oftentimes, as we know, medications can kind of just create more symptoms. And, there's so much the body wants to thrive and it wants to be supported. And when it is, we see healing happen. So, that mentality kind of carried into my nursing. And I started just to see more of a population that was underserved and really helping women, uncover and identify the root causes of so many of the common but not normal symptoms that we experience. So, whether it's irregular periods or low energy and fatigue as a mom, stubborn, inability to lose weight, these are all things that we kind of have come to find are so common and not normal, though. So, really looking at things from a holistic perspective, taking really so much into consideration of our nutrition and lifestyle. So, that kind of like on my own health journey really brought me from, modern medicine, there's a time and a place, but I think that there just needs to be so much more of a focus on the prevention piece, and really, optimizing health through a comprehensive lens. So that kind of, in my own education, just reading a lot and then actually going back and getting certifications to become a functional nutrition practitioner. So I still have the nursing background, but that really helps me in really working with clients and seeing the medical side, and really being able to empathize from so many women are just gaslighted when it comes to going to their providers and feeling like your labs are normal and there's nothing wrong with you, but really, being in tune to your body and listening to symptoms because they are red flags. They're telling you that something's not normal and that we should listen to our body. Um, from a non-professional standpoint, I am a mom of three. I have three, well, my oldest will be five and is at the end of this month. So almost five, 2.5, and 18 months. So, really transitioning to working as a functional nutrition practitioner gives me the flexibility to be home with my kids. And that was really important to me and still feeling like I'm living out my passion to be able to help women, really optimize and prioritize their health because as moms, it's so important. We oftentimes put our health on the back burner when it comes to like prioritizing our kids. So I think we can have the best of both worlds and it makes us a better mom, a more patient, more present mom, all of that.
Absolutely. I first saw a huge gap, I think, when I started coaching in 2010. A lot of my clients at the big box gym I was working at were in their 50s, right? Like early 50s, mid 50s, and just starting to work out. They were moms and their kids were now teenagers and had friends and had a social life, and they were just starting to like take care, like really take care of themselves. And everybody always said, like, you'll see when you become a mom, you'll see when you become a mom. And I'm just like, I don't think it has to be that way. And I think our culture is so all or nothing. Like, oh, you have to work out every single day and it has to look like this. And what we know is like it's consistency that's important, and it's just doing what you can when you can, and that there's a place for 20-minute workouts in life. And so I think that like with people like you and like me and like others is just showing moms that like it's you can start taking care of yourself like now, even when your kids are little. It's not going to be perfect, right? And it's not going to look like it did pre-kids, but let's not wait until you're in your 50s to start taking care of
Mhm.
yourself. So
Yeah.
what are those some like, I mean, we know them, we could just say them out loud. Some of the struggles that new moms face when it comes
Yeah.
to taking care of themselves.
I mean, moms, especially postpartum, feeling just constantly exhausted all the time, like feeling like they are just struggling to get through the day. By 3 p.m., they're just done. Um, difficulty losing weight. Now, I think that there is probably a little bit too much emphasis on trying to bounce back postpartum. But I think that, when we get to a point that we have optimized our body, we've optimized our nutrient and mineral levels post-pregnancy, that, a healthy weight loss is completely normal and possible. But a lot of times when we're experiencing hormonal imbalances, mineral deficiencies, all of these things impact our ability to lose healthy weight. And I'm a big, supporter of just like ideal body composition. I think that when we're like obsessing over a number on the scale, I think that's one thing. But some women just really struggle to lose weight, and whether it's blood sugar dysregulation or insulin resistance, and a lot of times that can happen postpartum. But just really, being in tune to your body, knowing exactly what it needs and nourishing it fully, as opposed to kind of falling into that trap of restricting. And then we see, the postpartum depression, the anxiety, the difficulty to breastfeed. I mean, that's a huge thing. And, I think so often, there are so many things that can be optimized within the body postpartum that we don't prep fully for pregnancy. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I see. So many women are on birth control for years. They get off birth control, they try to get pregnant immediately without really replenishing those stores. And then they kind of set themselves up for a very difficult road, where pregnancy is just, I mean, you are literally growing a human from scratch. You are depleting everything from your body. And so if you haven't fully prepped to be able to do that, your postpartum, you're going to struggle a lot more. And so I think like, just getting women to understand that is like huge. And of course, if you're already in postpartum and you didn't do those things, we can still, help optimize, replenish the body. So that way, if you do think about having kids, later on, your body is in a much better and more supported place. Um, but yeah, I mean, the low energy and fatigue, the, difficulty losing weight, the period issues. Some women really don't have many period issues prior to getting pregnant. And then after they are postpartum and they do get their periods back, a lot of times it's like, their hormones are raging, they're all over the place, and then they're having very symptomatic periods that are just not normal. And so typically those are the main symptoms that I deal with the women I work with. Um, you know, Postpartum can be very isolating for so many women. And I mean, it really does take a village. And so just, simply knowing really how to nourish your body can make such a difference. And then leaning into lifestyle modalities that are going to support your stress management, your sleep. I mean, we know as moms, like, especially when, coming from me who has like multiple children in my bed by the end of the night, like sleep can be a struggle for so many, but trying to optimize it as much as you can. And then really leaning into taking time for yourself to do stress management. Nervous system regulation is going to be huge when it comes to hormonal balance. Um, so, really those things are the things that I work on the most with clients. Um, but yeah, I mean, think the biggest thing is making sure that we're doing this in a way that it fits your lifestyle because everyone's different. And that's the thing. It's like, I think so many women are out there trying to piece things all together. They, oh, this freebie or, ooh, that worked for my friend. And they try to make it work for themselves, but that's really the problem is that, your lifestyle, your routine is so different from anyone else's. And that's why it's so beneficial to really be able to work with someone that can work with your lifestyle. So that way this becomes like part of your daily routine and it doesn't feel hard. It just feels second nature.
Yeah, I think that's so true of all of the postpartum things, right? Like you've seen it with pelvic floor issues or if someone has a diastasis or postpartum depletion and there's so much content out there. And you totally I'm not saying you can't like piece things together and like do it yourself, but what coaches like and practitioners do, like Taryn and I, is the time it saves you, right? Like just hire the person that has the experience, that has the education, and you can figure out what's going on with yourself like in 3 months instead of right
Mhm.
like in 3 years you're still feeling like shit or like not losing weight
Mhm.
or dealing
Yep.
with fatigue or all of these different things. So all of the things that you talked about, the fatigue and the stubborn weight, is that all encompassing postpartum depletion? And how long like postpartum can like postpartum depletion show up? Is it just within that fourth trimester or is it beyond that?
No, I mean, if we don't replenish, I mean, we're really needing to get things from our diet. And as we know, our soil has been depleted, the medications we take depletes minerals and vitamins. Water filtration, pesticides and herbicides that we use, all of these things impact the quality of the nutrients and minerals in our soil and the foods that we eat. And so, what our ancestors ate 100 years ago, the same food was so much more nutrient dense than what we see now. So, we really have to be much more intentional with how we nourish our body and, really that's where like functional testing comes in is because we can actually identify what specifically are the gaps and deficiencies in your body. And that way we can kind of optimize things and it really speeds the process up as opposed to kind of like playing whack-a-mole at like trying to, you know, kind of hit things, but we don't really know what we're doing. And then, using targeted supplementation and functional lab testing, that kind of speeds up the process of, really knowing what's going on underneath the surface. So, mineral depletion, will last as long as you're not, replenishing. And then, not to mention, postpartum is a very stressful period. So, stress burns through minerals at a rapid rate. So, even if you're replenishing, like just kind of blindly putting electrolytes in your water, if you really don't know how your body is managing the stress and burning through the minerals at the rate that they are, then you really kind of don't have a direction of like, is your body really deficient in sodium? Are you really deficient in magnesium? Like, there are so many different just bodily functions and activities at a cellular level that are so necessary and vital with these specific minerals that then we see thyroid dysfunction, adrenal dysfunction, blood sugar dysregulation. Like there's just so much that is impacted by just the health of your cell. And minerals are the spark plugs of the cell. So if we don't have the adequate amounts of minerals that we need, the cell will not be able to metabolize, signal hormones, produce energy, all very vital for obviously our body in general.
Talk a little bit more about the functional testing and what type of testing you do, how it differs from blood work. Do you do a little
Yeah.
bit of both and like what that looks like?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference, and for those who aren't really, familiar with functional versus a conventional approach. So functional looks at things through the lens of what's optimal. When you go to your primary care doctor and they have labs drawn, they're typically looking at your labs through if you are not in a disease process zone, your labs are going to come back looking normal. How I look at labs is through a functional lens. So I want to see things in optimal ranges. So my ranges are much smaller because we really want to optimize things before we get to that disease state. We want to make the changes. We want to move the needle to be able to decrease inflammation in the body, optimize thyroid function, optimize the adrenals, optimize the, metabolism through the liver, like optimize your digestion. Like all of these systems in the body need to be optimized, and there's things that we need to be able to do that. And when you're looking at labs, you want to make sure that we're doing it in an optimal way, so that way we really can like reverse disease processes and prevent them later on. So some of the testing that I use in my practice is hair tissue mineral analysis, which this is probably one of my favorite tests. It's non-invasive. It takes a small sample of your hair, and this actually shows me the mineral and nutrient deficiencies in your body. In addition, it also shows me how toxic elements or heavy metals are leaving the body. And it really just shows me how your body is managing stress. So, like I said, the body burns through minerals when it's in a stress state, whether it's actual or perceived. So, whether or not you're like actually feeling like stress, or like, you're sleep deprived, or, you're just undernourished, you're under eating, like all of these things are stress, and your body just looks at it like you're being chased by a tiger. Like you don't actually have to be being chased by a tiger for your body to actually be responding like that. So then your body goes into a fight or flight response. And this all, really affects the way that your mineral stores are depleted at a faster rate. So I can see all of this on hair tissue mineral analysis. In addition, specific minerals, I look at ratios, and this actually tells me like the health of your thyroid, the health of your adrenal glands, how you're regulating your blood sugar on a daily basis. Um, and what's nice with hair tissue mineral analysis is that it actually looks at what's going on inside the cell. Blood labs look at what's going on outside the cell. And HTMA looks at what's been going on for a 3-month period, as opposed to blood labs is just a moment in time when we actually draw the labs. So it just gives us some really great data. And it's a very inexpensive test, which is why I love it so much, because I think that's the biggest downfall with functional labs, is that some of them can be quite expensive. So HTMA is just very reasonably priced, gives us a lot of great data. And then in addition, I do use blood labs. I look at a full iron panel. I look at different, nutrients like, sodium, potassium, all of those things. I look at all the cofactors that we need to move iron. That's kind of a whole other topic. And then I also do stool testing in my practice, so GI map. So this looks at, what your gut microbiome looks like, because 70% of our immune system is housed in our gut. So if we have a lot of dysbiosis, we have pathogenic overgrowth, parasites, fungus, all of these will impact other systems of the body. So really getting all the data is really helpful when it comes to knowing exactly how to tailor a protocol to address your specific needs. And again, really moves the needle, quite a bit faster than it is, just kind of looking at like symptom profile and like what your health goals are. Um, and then, a lot of insight into like your metabolic health is really helpful, especially for my moms who are struggling to lose weight. So really getting a full picture.
Now, talking about the moms that you work with, have you seen or do you see that this postpartum depletion and these symptoms are more characteristic of moms who breastfeed or moms who don't breastfeed?
I mean, both are going to struggle with some level of mineral depletion. I mean, we a lot of times will see that in hair loss. Um, again, a lot of the symptoms that we talked about. Breastfeeding, definitely, you're gonna need more nutrient dense foods. You're gonna need more calories to be able to sustain breast milk. But we still see nutrient depletion, mineral depletion with all moms across the board, especially since most women do not prep properly for pregnancy. It's unfortunately something that just, general providers don't promote. They're kind of just like, oh, just stop taking your birth control and get pregnant. And it's like birth control essentially is like being on an antibiotic for whatever amount of time that you've been on it. So many women are on it for like 10 plus years. And so it completely, wrecks the gut microbiome, a lot of imbalances in the gut. It causes nutrient and mineral deficiencies, especially like B vitamins are huge, a huge depleter of birth control. And then we just look at like I mean, you literally are shutting off your sex hormone production. So you're not getting a period. Even though you're getting a bleed, you're not actually getting a period because you're not ovulating. So hormonal birth control shuts off ovulation. And so so many women don't understand that. Some women are so lucky that they can get pregnant very quickly after stopping birth control, but unfortunately that's not the majority. The majority of women, it takes a while for your body to get back. And then you have like the post-birth control syndrome, like the acne, like all of those things that happen after being on birth control for so long. And as we know, birth control a lot of times is used as symptom management, not truly, like if I firmly believe that if women knew their body, we wouldn't have such a need for birth control because of all the nasty side effects. But that being said, most women coming off birth control get pregnant, and then we kind of just start this vicious cycle. And then some women don't replenish, they get pregnant again, and then we just go through
Mhm.
that cycle again and again. And like, no wonder women have so much nausea, morning sickness. I mean, so many of my clients, it doesn't even stop at the first trimester. Like sometimes we all think like, oh yeah, 12 weeks and you'll be out of the woods. And like so many women continue to struggle with it. And a lot of that is related to blood sugar dysregulation. I mean, regulating your blood sugar can have a huge impact on, the nausea that you experience during your pregnancy. Um, but, really optimizing those levels prior to even getting pregnant are going to make your pregnancy so much more optimal, make your postpartum so much more optimal. And then so many more women would not be just struggling to breastfeed, and just really learning how to address those hormonal shifts. I mean, some of them are inevitable, obviously. I mean, you literally were growing a human and then you obviously now aren't. So there is a period of adjustment, but really leaning into how to nourish your body fully. Like I would say that's probably the number one thing because most women are not eating enough. And, most women have spent years restricting calories, restricting carbohydrates. All of that is extremely vital for hormone production, hormone signaling. So essentially, we've just like wreaked havoc on our hormones. Diet culture has done that to us. And so, really, it's like shifting your mindset around food and exercise and like, realizing that like our body needs a baseline level of nutrition to be able to function. So it's like if you're not feeding yourself enough, no wonder you're having all these symptoms. I mean, that's like first things first.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you got into the birth control conversation because I was one of those people who was on birth control for, I mean, yeah, 18 years. Like, isn't that terrible? I mean, like, but it's just like I was like you before I kind of woke up in 2020, was just like, oh, okay, like I'm having really painful periods. I had endometriosis. This was just what I was told and how I was told to kind of control my symptoms and keep my endometriosis at bay. And it's funny because now, I still have work to do, which is why I'm, gonna do my HTMA with you and figure out some things. But I was just like, oh yeah, I'll just get on birth control and that'll, help my symptoms. But it's just like we don't, it's root cause. You talk about root cause all the time instead of just taking a medication. Like birth control is a medication, right? It's not like the end all be all. I definitely want to get into talking more about periods. So first let's talk about the first postpartum period. When can women expect to get their period back? What influences that? What do you see? There's a very broad range here because
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
got mine back at 5 months postpartum, exclusively nursing. And I know some women don't get it the whole time they nurse. So what is that? Why is there such a broad range
Yeah.
with the postpartum period?
Yeah. So I'm one of those very I don't want to say unlucky, but I'm one of those women who literally gets it back like 7 to 8 weeks postpartum. And it's not
Wow.
abnormal. But it just means that your body can support pregnancy. So everyone is different, like you said. I would say and I was exclusively breastfeeding, so I'm like very small, small minority here. Um, but I mean, it really varies. Prolactin is that hormone that helps with breastfeeding. And so oftentimes that is what kind of inhibits your period from coming back. But I mean, that being said, that's why it's so important to realize that like breastfeeding is not birth control. You could have ovulated and just not had your period yet, and then, you get pregnant, and that's what happens. But the first period coming back, I mean, I would say most women, if you're exclusively breastfeeding, I would say it's probably around that 9 months to a year mark that most women will probably see their period come back. Now, the first period coming back can be very like either super heavy. I feel like most women probably experience a heavier period their first period just because you haven't bled for at least 9 months. And then, including however many months you didn't have it postpartum. So typically it tends to be a little heavier, but a normal period should be 4 to 7 days of pretty, I mean, you probably should have about like maybe 2 days of heavy bleeding. But you should have like a decent amount of bleeding where you're not, I mean, you shouldn't be going through more than like a pad an hour or anything like that. But I mean, a good healthy bleed. So 4 to 7 days, medium flow, maybe 1 or 2 days of heavier flow. But I mean, if you're just spotting through your period, that is not normal. Um, a normal cycle length is 28 days, give or take. We should be ovulating about day 14. Now, I know there's a lot of confusion about like when the first day of your cycle. So the first day of your period is the first day of your cycle. I know a lot of people think, oh, my period, that's the end of my cycle. Nope. First day of your cycle is the first day of your period. So whenever your period ends, like you're counting out to the first day of your next period, that is your cycle length. So that's often a misconception that I hear a lot is not really understanding what the first day of our menstrual cycle is. Um, and then, like I said, 28-day period is pretty normal. And then 14, day 14 is typically when you ovulate. And you can know that based on your cervical mucus. It should be pretty slippery, egg white consistency. Um, but yeah, if you are not having, if you're having a short bleed, less than 4 days, a longer bleed, anywhere more than a week, those I would be considering abnormal, and could be related to, a variety of different things. I mean, again, testing is and really understanding what your symptoms look like is the easiest way to kind of like troubleshoot and really figure out what your root causes are. But I mean, honestly, and I say this so often, a healthy period is one you should really barely even notice. You really shouldn't be rolled over in the fetal position for a week. And I say that because I was that girl that was literally curled up in the fetal position in high school, relying on a heating pad, Midol, or ibuprofen. And like that is not normal. Like you really should have a pretty asymptomatic period. Um, of course, there's going to be the hormonal shifts during your cycle. We typically are a little bit more outward during our follicular and our ovulatory phase. I mean, that's just how nature created us. During our ovulatory phase, we should be like feeling good, more outgoing. There's certain things that, are better activities for us to be incorporating because, as we look at like generations ago, like our whole purpose of ovulating is to have offspring. So like that is the reason like you feel, better in your body usually around your ovulatory period. You feel, more attractive. You're more likely to like do well in a job interview, like just really leaning into those shifts during your cycle. And then like that first part of your luteal phase, which, that lasts usually about 10 days before your period. The first part, you're feeling pretty good. And then that last week before your period, you're kind of turning inward. You're like, I don't want to go anywhere. And that's totally normal. Like really leaning into that. And like, I'm sure that a lot of the listeners have heard of cycle syncing. And there's a lot to be said with that, is just, really leaning into the ebbs and flows of your cycle. It can be really helpful. Not saying that we need to do that 100% of the time because you can't just like shut your life off, but just like leaning into how you're feeling during the certain parts of your cycle, because that's why we have a 28-day cycle. I mean, men have a 24-hour cycle. That's why they will never understand what we go through. But I mean, that's so interesting and beautiful about women, is that we are different and we do have those hormonal shifts throughout our cycle. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say about period health.
Yeah. When it comes to the working out, so I think I think when you work out as consistently and as long as I have,
Hmm.
and especially now, I just feel like after having a baby, I'm so in tune with my body. And I'll know if I'm lifting depending
Hmm.
on like what part of my cycle is. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to lift as heavy. Like I could
Yeah.
just, and I deadlifting is one of my favorite exercises. I love to lift heavy. Taryn asked me what I do to regulate my nervous system, and I say lifting weights, and she laughs at me, but I'm working on it. But anyway, so I know like when I'm deadlifting and if I'm at a certain part of my cycle, if I'm either like on my period or right before my period, 200 pounds feels like I can't get it off the floor. And
Hmm.
then I'm lifting that same weight during ovulation and I'm like I could lift it for 5 reps. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Yeah.
just so and it's just so it's just being aware, right? And it's
Hmm.
like, if you do I also think like so exercise is definitely my forte, but don't you think like hit workouts all every single day is also wreaking havoc on women's
Totally.
hormones?
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
like let's talk about that a little bit in terms of
mhm.
like just I think culture and marketing and just the different Orange Theories and F45 and hit workouts and like those aren't the really like the best thing for us
Mhm.
anymore,
Yeah.
right? So talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah. So, I find this a lot with my clients. And I mean, again, I was one of those women who did the hit workouts and fasted workouts. I drink coffee for breakfast. I mean, it just wreaks havoc on our hormones. And when you think about it in a way, especially in the mornings, your cortisol is at its highest. Like that's your wake up hormone. It's your internal alarm clock. And then we get up and we have coffee and then we do a fasted workout. And like that is literally just like increasing your cortisol levels and like just shooting them up sky high. Not to mention you're not fueling your body, so your blood sugar is sky high because cortisol is coming to action because you haven't put fuel in your body in the way of food. But I think that during certain parts of your cycle, I mean, I have my women who are like, no, I love my hit workouts. I'm not giving them up. And a lot of times it just kind of is that conversation of like, okay, well, let's try to like do those during certain parts of your cycle where your body is a little bit better supported, during the follicular and ovulatory phase and maybe just the first part of your luteal phase. And then let's pull back the intensity because what we find is like there's just so much nervous system dysregulation and your body is just constantly in fight or flight. And then, pair that with not nourishing your body enough. And, this is something that like, I think that so many women, it's a mindset shift that we need to have is like, we need to eat to earn the workout, not work out to earn the food. And like, I think so many women think that like we've used exercise as a form of punishment or like to justify what we've eaten. And like, that's not the mindset that we need to have. We need to have the mindset of like, we need to fuel our body in a way that we can handle the workout and be able to optimize our workouts and recover faster. And that is like a huge mindset shift that I think most millennial women can relate to, that we spent years counting calories and counting carbs and, counting points. Gosh, Weight Watchers. That was did I literally went to
That
meetings with
was a
my mother,
time.
like, you know, and it's
Never
like,
been on it. Plenty of clients that have been and
yes,
still swear by it. And I'm just like, if it worked, you wouldn't have to keep doing it.
mhm,
Sorry. Like,
exactly.
that's with
Totally.
anything.
Totally. And like, and I think that's the hugest thing is like, you're doing the hit workouts, but you're not even fueling your body enough. So you're just like in this completely depleted state all the time. Your nervous system is running on, just, I mean, you're just on cortisol all the time. And so it's just like we really need to take a step back and realize like what we're doing to our bodies, how it's impacting our hormones. Like when your cortisol is just through the roof all the time, that's going to impact all of your other hormones. And so it's going to cause things like weight loss resistance and, cause blood sugar dysregulation and all of those things. So, um, yeah, just really like being intentional with your workouts, making sure you're feeling properly, and that if you must do hit workouts, just do it during certain parts of your cycle where your body is in a better place to handle it.
I love what you said about working out and like we have to work out to eat. And it's like, no, we need to eat. I'm like, I wrote it down because I'm like, I am using that little minute and a half for my reel because it's so, like, that is literally like the hill I will die on. And I've been coaching for 14 years. And it's just like we have, it's really, like you said, it's our mindset and it's our like
Mhm.
effed up relationship with food and exercise. And it's
Yep.
just, I really think we are the generation of moms that's fixing that though.
Mhm.
Because it's like, my mom wasn't like a chronic dieter or anything like that, but she never worked out because she never had a weight problem. I
Mhm.
literally have asked her this one day. I'm like, why did you never work out like growing up? And she's like, oh, I would work out for like a little bit, like after each baby to like lose the weight. And then once I lost the weight, like I didn't have to exercise anymore. And so that's, I think for women, exercise has been marketed as a means to lose weight instead of like,
Yep.
why do we have to lose weight all the time? Like, why do we have to even have like a weight loss or a fat loss goal? It's completely okay. I mean, and I'm
Mhm.
sure you see this too with your clients is like, we just want to feel good, right? Like weight loss I think is like a byproduct, right? Of like treating your
Exactly.
body respectfully and giving it the nourishment it deserves, the exercise it deserves and like not punishing it. Um
Mhm.
for whatever XYZ. And I think of Shape magazines. Like that's literally all I can think about is like
Mhm.
Shape magazines and Self magazines growing up and reading
New
them
diet
and
trend. Yep.
yeah, and like seeing like the little like, graphics of like a donut and how many minutes you need to run to burn it off. Like you've seen
Mhm.
those, right? It's like a
Yeah.
donut and then how many minutes of cardio. And then it's like French fries and how many minutes of cardio do you need? Instead of actually teaching us that what we need to be doing the whole time is building muscle.
Mhm.
Building muscle because then we will be more metabolically active, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Instead of just like preaching cardio, cardio, cardio. It's like
Yeah.
finally women are like, I need to get my ass in the gym. I need and lift weights instead of like I need to get on the treadmill.
Yeah.
You've talked about this a lot in the podcast, and I wanted to like touch on this specific topic is nervous system regulation. So talk
Mhm.
about how does our nervous system become dysregulated as moms and how or like what methods do you help clients with to regulate their nervous system again when it's dysregulated?
Yeah. So I think as moms, I think that there's this mentality that like, oh, it's normal to have mom rage or it's normal to like feel overstimulated all the time. Like especially, I mean, not that moms that aren't home with their kids don't feel this too. But I know you and I like we're home with our kids a lot and we both work from home and it's really hard some days. Like it's really hard to like feel like you're being patient and present. And like when you're not taking the time to regulate your nervous system, Amy, I think one of the biggest pieces is too, it's you have to understand that your children like co-regulate from you. So if you're not regulating your nervous system, your child is going to really struggle with that. And so that's why like it is so important that you are doing things that you're not constantly just in fight or flight. Like, I feel like a lot of women think that motherhood is an era of survival, and it does not have to be like that. It can truly be an era that you thrive in and you look back and you're like, wow, I felt my best. I was able to play with my kids. I was able to keep up with them. All of that is so important. But like when you take the time to actually like calm and get your body out of fight or flight, like this has so much to do with like the state of inflammation in your body, the ability for you to heal. I mean, there's so many women that I work with, especially like especially when it comes to weight loss. We can be doing all of the things, but if we are not regulating our nervous system, your body does not feel safe to lose weight. And that's the biggest thing is like you look at women who are constantly stressed, who are constantly in this state of nervous system dysregulation. Your body is not going to prioritize things like ovulating, like weight loss, hair growth, like postpartum. We see that a lot. Like anything that is non-vital, so think brain, heart, lungs, your body is going to put it on the back burner. So when you have symptoms that start showing up and you are not putting the work into regulating your nervous system so that your body feels safe to be able to do these things, you're going to struggle. And so that's why like it's a huge piece and it's just not something that they talk about in conventional medicine. Like they're kind of like, "Oh, you're stressed, just don't stress so much." Okay, well, thank you. That's great. But it's like And like we've talked about, like you're like, oh, I lift weights to like regulate my nervous system. And it's like that is definitely a millennial woman type of thing where like you can't sit still. Like if you find yourself sitting on the sofa watching TV, but you're still scrolling your phone, like that is like a sign that you are very dysregulated. Like you just can't sit still. You always have to be doing something. Like it's just very in our culture, in our nature, like there are telltale signs that you really have to lean into that nervous system regulation. And just because you're doing all of the things, sometimes that doesn't mean that you're actually regulating because, it's really about taking your body into that state where it doesn't feel like you're being chased by a tiger. So, every client that I work with is different. Every client enjoys certain things. Like some people love, like I love magnesium baths. That like is my jam. Some people hate baths. That is like not for everybody. And so, some people love yoga and love meditation. Some people love journaling or coloring can be really just like so good for the soul. And it just like can be very just relaxing for some people. Really figuring out like what gives you that regulation of your nervous system and something that you enjoy. It can be a walk, just not like something super fast paced, but like, something that allows you to kind of just decompress and really slow down and clear your mind. But yeah, I mean, even just a hug, like a long hug with someone can be really regulating for your nervous system. So, I mean, we really heavily focus on that because I think just as a culture, we just think stress is a normal, part of daily life, and we don't do a lot to really, regulate that piece. Um, and stress causes inflammation in the body, and we know that inflammation is the root of all chronic disease. And so when we're not doing those things, and then if you're not doing that and we're not seeing the needle move, like that can be a reason. So,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. I feel I feel so seen or called out, one of the two. I'm just like I have such a hard time like
Hmm.
not doing anything. And
Hmm.
I don't think I'm alone. Like I think that's
Totally.
most like millennial high
Yeah.
achieving like women, like even if it's stay-at-home mom, working mom, whatever. I feel like we've been told that like doing, journaling or meditating or taking a bath, like that it's lazy, and it's like go do something, or listen to something educational while you're taking your
Yeah.
bath or whatnot. So what are some last things that you want to talk to moms about? What is some advice, I guess, that you have for a first time mom?
Yeah.
How can moms prep for pregnancy and postpartum period? I think that that is such a huge thing because we all prep for the baby
Hmm.
and we all do it, right? And I think for me, I knew that postpartum was going to be different. Now
Hmm.
I definitely know, but one of the things I did was prep meals. I did like 16 like free I did so many freezer meals so that I would
Hmm.
just have them ready to go, and luckily I did because I had you just don't know what's going to go
Right.
on postpartum. So I had a lot of pelvic floor trauma, couldn't stand up, like couldn't cook, like thank God I did that for myself. But what are some other things that moms can do to prepare for, these periods of the life to avoid postpartum depletion and some of these symptoms we've been
Yeah.
talking about?
So I mean, I think what's actually really interesting is that every single client I work with, no matter if they are preconception, postpartum, like, later in postpartum where they have multiple kids, like no matter what stage of motherhood you're in, we're always going to start with a foundation. So, I always like to say, well, you wouldn't build a house on a cracked foundation. Like there are some things that we just really need to focus on to make sure that your body is supported in a really good place. That way down the line, like if there's things that we need to address, whether it's, in testing what we find, we want to make sure that we're doing the basics really well. So, a couple things just to focus on is, obviously this is different for everyone, but ensuring we're eating enough is huge. I don't like to give like a calorie amount for each person because we're all different, but I will say for most women, if you're not eating at least 2,000 calories a day, you're not eating enough. If you are breastfeeding, you are definitely not eating enough. Um, and that's why, like, I am not a big meal plan. Unless my clients specifically ask me for a meal plan, I feel like a meal plan kind of puts my clients in a box. I want to give them the tools, the systems, and the accountability to be able to build meals no matter where they are, whether they're out, whether they're, at home, like whether they're traveling, and really focusing on balanced blood sugar is huge. So, protein, fat, carb, and fiber. Every single meal. If you're doing a snack, I want you to have protein at every snack too. Blood sugar regulation is huge, especially for women that deal with like any kind of like PCOS, hormonal imbalance. Blood sugar regulation is huge there. So eating enough, blood sugar regulation, adding minerals to your water. You should be drinking at least half your body weight in ounces. So if you are a 120-pound female, you should be drinking at least 60 ounces of water and adding minerals. I I love how the modern medical system has like fear-mongered salt. We need salt. You need sodium for your stomach acid production. You need sodium for your adrenal glands. Like it is needed. So even if it's just adding high quality salt to your water, do that a couple times a day, you know, like salt your food as for, seasoning. But don't fear salt. Like salt is necessary. We need it. Um, and then, move your body every day. Moving your body in whatever capacity, especially in postpartum, like even if it's just going for a walk, that is like a win-win because you're getting out in sunlight and you're moving your body for the day. So like that is one of the easiest ways that you can kill two birds with one stone. Because so many people, especially in the wintertime, they are not getting outside enough. And we know that like circadian rhythm support helps to optimize your sleep. There's just so many benefits to getting outside. Vitamin D, we need to be getting that and absorbing it. Um, and then, obviously stress management. So, taking a couple times, sometimes with my clients, I literally have them schedule it like an appointment. Like, these are the nights that you're taking 30 to 45 minutes and whatever feels good to you, whether it's a bath or it's meditation or doing a face mask or just journaling or reading on a Kindle, like whatever it is, whatever helps you relax and helps to regulate your nervous system, like schedule it into your day. Because if you don't, a lot of women, if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. And I know that there's, times that like kids aren't sleeping or, you're up late with a sick kid or whatever. But, I do think that there is like a level of accountability when you write something down. So I think that that's huge. But the foundations are where I start with all of my clients. So like that doesn't change from person to person. Obviously, getting specific with exactly what we're working on is going to change person to person, but it doesn't, it's not different whether we're, nutrition, sleep, stress, mindset, movement are all the basics that we're going to start with. And we want to be consistent and we want to do it in a way that's going to work with your routine, your lifestyle. That's the most important thing. Um, and then from there, I mean that's what I would say of like starting with. As far as postpartum, I would focus less on the registry and more on like taking the time to know you're going to heal well postpartum because I think so many women, again, we're like so obsessed with the registry. And then we forget about like how important it is to care for ourselves. And like that is going to make or break your postpartum. Like women will struggle if they don't take care of themselves. So that is what I would,
Absolutely.
they are the first things I
Absolutely.
would focus on.
I now that like since we, I wish like you don't know it until you know something, right?
Mhm.
And like now after like becoming a mom, obviously having the experience I did, every time I'm invited to a baby shower, I get something for the mom. Like I
Mhm.
don't even, but of course I'm gonna buy the baby an outfit. Like of
Yeah.
course, right? But usually I'll like go in on a postpartum gift basket with a couple of friends because it could add up, right? And I just get, a bunch of snacks and like different like, cold like just things like magnesium and like sitz bath
Mhm.
spray and just like a really nice like postpartum care basket because it's like you don't know until you know. And like I did it for myself just because I'm like, oh, like because this is what I do. But I'm like, man, if other moms don't know, like they need to, like they're healing too. And like, of course, I hope nobody ever has trauma that I did, but some people are going to. But
Hmm.
anyways, and then, if I don't know the mom or I'm not super close to her, I'll give her like a couple months of like my postpartum like healing program because
Yeah.
that's another, you talk about the sodium and the lie that we're told. I'm totally with you on the sodium thing too. But telling a mom to wait till 6 weeks and do nothing, that's not supportive of like her healing
Hmm.
either, whether it's a
Right.
vaginal birth or a C-section. So, where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. My handle is Taryn E. Keller. I'm sure Christine will drop it in the show notes. And then I do have a freebie if your listeners want to check it out. So I have a mineral mocktail guide, and I usually say the first place that I would start with pretty much all of my clients. I mean, minerals are like they are the unsung heroes, I like to call them. But we like to drink our minerals around here and like make them fun little mocktails. So I do have a guide which kind of like goes into why we need minerals, why they're so important. And I think I have like 12 recipes on there. So yeah, some of them are like a sleepy girl mocktail, which can help with your sleep, but also getting minerals in it. And then some are just kind of like some fun ones for, around the year. So I
Nice.
can send you that link so you can include
Yes,
that and people can get that and start there.
absolutely.
But yeah, and then, obviously I offer different packages. I do one-on-one, and then I do have a hair tissue mineral analysis testing bundle, which is kind of like my introductory offer. So that's kind of like a good way to kind of get some functional labs that, is a lower price point if you're not quite ready for one-on-one support. Um, but yeah, I think my biggest message is for moms is like you don't have to suffer through motherhood feeling like crap all the time. Like there is a way that you can feel good in your body. You can have the energy to keep up with your kids, have the energy to have a good relationship with your spouse. I mean, I think it's all possible when we really optimize and feel our bodies. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And take care of yourself because I think that we all want to just be martyrs and just take care of the kids and that
Mhm.
it's selfish to take care of ourselves, but it's not because taking care of ourselves in any capacity, whether it's you're dealing with, postpartum depletion and these different symptoms that we talked about with Taryn, or if you're dealing with pelvic floor trauma or birth injury or prolapse and you don't feel good, whether it's from a nutrition perspective or just like your body physically doesn't feel good, seek help because honestly,
Yeah,
like you feeling your best self, like will make you a better mom.
totally.
You cannot you can't expect like well-behaved children and children who will listen if like you're a mess, like exactly what Taryn
Mhm.
said about the nervous system regulation and how our kids like feel our energy and feed off of it. So and honestly, I'm getting my HTMA done with Taryn soon, and so I will definitely keep you guys posted on my results with that because my postpartum journey has been, nothing short of entertaining for my listeners. But no, I definitely want to, give Taryn feedback and let you guys know on my test results and everything. So, Taryn, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we finally got to do
Yeah,
this.
thank you so much for having me, Christine. This was great. I
Yes.
love chatting about all these things, and yeah, more
Yeah,
women need to.
everybody. Absolutely. So I will put in the show notes, go follow Taryn. She always posts great content. Snag her freebie. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And as always, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.